So when a lot of people think about Genesis Ascended Part 1, they're thinking about the return of the Genesis storyline, the new creatures, pirate ships, naval combat, treasure hunting, and everything else coming with Tides of Fortune. But I think a lot of players are overlooking what might actually be the biggest part of this entire update. Because hidden behind all of the pirate content is a brand new ocean technology that could end up changing ARK far beyond Genesis itself. And while Studio Wildcard haven't officially confirmed these systems are coming to every map, comments from Jeremy suggest that this might be much bigger than a single DLC. In fact, Genesis Ascended Part 1 might be laying the foundations for the future of ARK Survival Ascended itself. And if that's true, this update could end up being remembered as one of the most important updates in ARK's history. And if you're interested in playing Genesis Ascended Part 1 Day 1, come and join our free LoadedCrysis servers. The link to our Discord is down below, and come and join us for launch day hype. Come and find your tribe and get involved with the Tides of Fortune giveaways that we'll be doing. Anyway, let's get in with the video. So for years, one of ARK's biggest weaknesses has been its oceans. Think about some of the most iconic maps in the game's history. The Island, Ragnarok, the Center, Valguero, and even maps like Astraeos today. Despite having huge bodies of water, how many players actually spend their time living at sea? For most survivors, the ocean has always been something you travel through rather than somewhere you actually want to be. You cross it to get somewhere else, you dive into it when you need resources, you tame a few sea creatures, maybe you run some underwater caves, but then you're straight back to land. The ocean has never really felt like its own living, breathing environment, and that's something the Studio Wildcard themselves seem to recognize. Recently, during discussions surrounding Genesis Ascended Part 1 and Tides of the Fortune, Jeremy spoke about ARK's water systems and acknowledged something many players have felt for years. ARK's oceans are relatively flat, they're predictable, and compared to modern games, they're fairly basic. Now that's not necessarily a criticism of ARK, because remember ARK Survival Evolved launched back in 2015, and the technology available back then was completely different. Wildcard had other priorities. The game was focused on dinosaurs, survival mechanics, caves, bosses, breeding, progression, and everything else that made ARK what it is today. But now, more than a decade later, Wildcard has the opportunity to revisit some of those systems and take them much further. And that's exactly what Genesis Ascended appears to be doing. One of the most interesting things we've learnt recently is that the new ocean systems are heavily inspired by the technology that developed Atlas. Now I know some of you are already typing in the comments, Dom, I don't want ARK to become Atlas, and honestly, neither do I completely. ARK is ARK, Atlas is Atlas, they're different games. But here's the thing, Atlas actually did some things extremely well, especially when it came to the ocean. The sea felt alive, ships reacted to waves, the weather mattered. Traveling across the ocean felt like an adventure, rather than simply moving from one location to another. And years after development, Wildcard has been able to learn from that technology and bring the best parts of it back into ARK. Not to replace ARK, but to improve it. So think about what we're potentially getting. Dynamic water, improved wave systems, customizable ships, naval warfare, ocean exploration designed around actual sailing, treasure hunting, island hopping, sea fortresses, entire adventures built around the ocean rather than simply treating it as an empty space between land masses. That's a massive shift in the design for ARK. For over 10 years, ARK has primarily been about surviving on land, and Genesis Ascended looks like it wants players to survive on the sea as well. And that could completely change how players play the game and what is the meta. But this is where things get truly interesting, because the biggest story might not actually be what Genesis gets. The biggest story might be what happens after Genesis. At the moment, Studio Wildcard hasn't confirmed it's coming to maps like the Island, Ragnarok, the Center, Extinction, Aberration, but it's important to know that because we need to separate the facts from speculation. And as of today, there is no official announcement saying every map is getting the Genesis Ocean overhaul. However, there are some very interesting clues that suggest this technology could be eventually spread far beyond Genesis Part 1. One of the biggest clues comes from Jeremy himself, he's the CEO. While discussing the technology, Jeremy didn't simply talk about Genesis. He spoke about how these advancements benefit modders and improve the overall compatibilities of ARK's engine. Now that wording is extremely important because if this feature was designed exclusively for Genesis Ascended, then why talk about modders? Why discuss broader engine compatibilities? And why focus on future potential? Those comments suggest that Wildcard views this as more than just a one-off feature. Instead, it sounds like they're building new tools and technology directly into ARK itself. And if that's true, the possibilities will be becoming enormous. Now let's say you're a map developer. Imagine creating a tropical island with full dynamic oceans, massive pirate strongholds. Imagine creating hidden islands that only become accessible under certain ocean conditions. Imagine giant sea events, ocean bosses, treasure fleets, whirlpools, storm systems, naval battles between tribes. All of that suddenly becomes more realistic if the technology itself is actually at the engine level. And I think that's why the modding community may actually benefit from Genesis Ascended more than anyone else. Then we have another major piece of the puzzle, the ARK World Creator. One of the biggest future projects currently being worked on for ARK Survival Ascended coming Q3 2026. And for those who missed the announcement, Wildcard plans to release an in-game world creation system that allows players to create their own maps and experiences. And that's a huge deal just on its own. But when you combine that announcement with these new ocean technologies, things become even more interesting. Because if Wildcard is building powerful world creation tools and powerful new ocean systems at the same time, it makes perfect sense for those technologies to work together. Suddenly the community isn't limited by what Wildcard can build. Thousands of creators can begin building experiences of their own, and historically some of ARK's best content has come from its modders. You look at Ragnarok, you look at Valguero, you look at Astraeos. Some of the most beloved maps in ARK history weren't originally made by Wildcard at all. Now you imagine what those creators could build with significantly better technology available to them. And that's why I think many players are underestimating Genesis Ascended Part 1, because a lot of people see it as another remaster. Genesis, but prettier, with Unreal Engine 5 visuals and some pirate content added on top. But I don't actually think that's the full picture. I think Genesis Ascended may be acting as Wildcard's testing ground for some of the biggest technological advancements we've seen since Survival Ascended launches. Now, this is something they've talked about in the past. When they're testing for an upcoming DLC, they tend to pick different points of what they've been working on and implement it into the game, and they're constantly testing new features as time goes on. Unreal Engine 5.7 is on the horizon. The world creator is in development. New scripting systems are being worked on. Mod support continues to expand. Atlas technology is being integrated into ARK. Ocean physics are being overhauled. Ship systems are being introduced, and it suddenly starts to feel like Wildcard isn't just preparing for the next DLC, they're preparing for the next generation of ARK content, the next several years, or maybe even the next decade. And obviously don't forget Genesis Ascended Part 1 launches on June 25th, assuming everything stays on schedule. We're incredibly close to seeing finally all of this technology in action. So let me know in the comment section down below, how far do you think the technology can expand ARK? Would you like to see this type of ocean system within the other maps? And what are you looking forward to for the future of ARK's technology? Thank you very much for watching, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.